Episode of the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. Today, we are taking a little bit of a different approach to today's podcast episode. And if you guys don't already know, I host another podcast called The Next Generation. These are longer 1-hour format podcast episodes that I have been doing for a little over a year and a half now. And so I actually today have decided to take one of those episodes that I did earlier this last year with Clinton Laflin and chop it up into about a 20-minute episode. So taking it from about an hour to 20 minutes and just all of Clinton's advice, things that he talked about, all of the things put into a little bit of a shorter format episode for all of you listeners out there on the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. So just a little bit of background on Clinton. Clinton Laflin is a 5th generation Angus rancher from here in Kansas. He runs his own operation now called C-Bar-L Cattle. Clinton is a dear, dear friend of mine. We have had the opportunity of not only kind of growing up together, but just being in the show world, all of the things like that. Clinton is here today to talk about so many different things. If you guys don't know Clinton personally, he does have a mild case of cerebral palsy. So it's really cool to just personally, as a friend of Clinton's, see his journey throughout the years of, we'll talk about it more in the podcast, but really taking his disability and being successful in spite of it and not using it as an excuse for his life and using it as kind of a catapult to really just have an amazing life and an amazing business within the cattle industry, and what that kind of looks like as someone with a disability, with a physical disability. And he just brings so much tangible advice for cattlemen, whether you are a everyday cattleman, whether you're a college student, all of those things. There's just, this episode is going to be packed full of Clinton's knowledge and advice and thoughts and all of those things. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this podcast episode with Clinton.
So it was always okay, you may not be able to do things like, carry a 50 pound bag of feed somewhere, but you can figure out how to, learn and help us figure rations. You can help us figure out breeding decisions, genetics, livestock selection. It was never a look, you can't do this. It was just the understanding of, okay, you can do anything you put your mind to, but you have to be willing to work harder and more creatively than pretty much anybody else. Because the only person that is doing things the way that you need to do them to get stuff done is it was one of those things and so that kind of, that ability to overcome some challenges and think outside the box, like you said, has been kind of a massive impact on my life. Because I couldn't necessarily escape cerebral palsy, but I could be successful in spite of it. When I first, was a kid and growing up, for a while I was scared to take risks, and it took me a while to kind of get over that fear of, oh God, I'm different. Yeah, but it doesn't bother me now. It's just kind of is what it is. And so, but I think it's also been an asset for me because it shows people that, okay, I think we have a bad habit of thinking that, oh, we have to be 6'5", we have to do this a certain way, we have to run 300 cows to be able to be involved in the cattle industry, we have to be the quote unquote stereotype of what we think about when we're involved in ag. And really basically my life goal since I became an extension agent is to be able to help kids, help youth, and help those around me figure out that, hey, I can be involved. Let me just figure out how, regardless of what your last name is, how long you've been involved, you can do some things. And it's just figuring out, what that looks like. One thing that I've really focused on in the last couple of years with the economy and some things that we're working on is, just being there for other producers. I think, and just being an ear to listen, because we've had mental health struggles in this industry for a long time. And I think, you could focus on that. And I think what we're doing today is a great example of, hey, if my story can help kind of motivate somebody else or give them a path forward on I can do this, then we've won the day in my opinion. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to come on, because it's, as long as people have kind of an idea that, okay, now I kind of know what I want to do, then they can figure out how to do it. And I guess one of my big pieces of advice is to anybody listening is that I think we never underestimate the ability of yourself to do what you need to do. And never underestimate your power to positively affect the people around you. Because I think if you just focus on being yourselves, and the biggest thing is figuring out what your strengths are, and playing to those strengths, and really continuous learning, and you can do a lot of stuff. And so from those personal connections, then I realized, hey, okay, I really like cows, and I really like working with people that are knowledgeable, that I have the opportunity to get to know because of things like the National Junior Board. I wonder if I could put those two things together and have somebody help me run my cows. And so that's where then it was like, oh, hey, cool, and then I graduated from college, and I had the opportunity to get my master's at Oklahoma State, and go on an international trip. And so it was just every place that I've ever gone that has been kind of an important point in my life has been surrounded by, you know, people that I've met, and those connections have helped me go to the next point and step in my life. And so it's just been kind of a neat journey, because as I've done that, then I've been able to build partnerships on individual cows. I have a cattle partnership in Canada. I've got ET calves in Minnesota. I've got, and so we've got different things to do this. But if it wouldn't have been for that willingness to think outside the box and team up in terms of partnerships, then Clinton Laflin probably doesn't have cows. And so those partnerships, then I have cows, and I get done judging in college, and people are like, oh, hey, Clinton might do a good job judging this show. Well, so then, my first major show I judge is in Mexico, because of the people that I met on the international trip to New Zealand when I was doing my master's program at Oklahoma State. So, so really, I think it's anything that we do doesn't happen overnight. It's one of those things that you have to be willing to put your dreams in an oven, not a microwave. And yeah, yeah, so you have to have the discipline and the diligence to say, okay, I might be in this point right now, but where do I want to be in 6 months, a year, 5 years, and what are the things that I'm going to have to do to kind of start going that way? And you're probably, because I'm a prime example of this, I am nowhere near what I thought I was going to be doing or where I would end up when I first started this journey. But I've gotten to exactly where I've needed to be. And so the big thing is I just start. And you kind of have a plan, and you take advantage of those opportunities that are in front of you, and you have to build your own. And when you put those two things together, you're going to be a successful individual. Just be prepared for mountains, rivers, potholes. Never sell yourself short, because when I was in college, I never thought that I would be able to be judging shows on a national level or an international level. But now I can say I've judged in 9 states and 3 different countries. And it's just because of my willingness to think outside the box, take risks, and get to know people. And I'm not talking about texting somebody on a phone. I mean, going and taking producer visits, seeing them in their, looking them in their eyes and saying, okay, and just learning from them. And so, you know, probably 95% of what I've learned and taken back to my own set of cows has been because of herd visits that I've done, because of beef industry events that I've attended, because of opportunities that I've taken advantage of while there. So the big piece of that success and kind of building is because of my network. And so, there could be some very foundational things of okay, follow through on what you say you're going to do, show up on time when somebody asks you for help. I cannot emphasize that enough. Show up on time. And if you do that and you can find ways to bring value to those people that are wanting that you are helping, then more people are going to want to help you. And so a lot of times people aren't going to meet you, you know, they have a willingness to meet you halfway. But you have to be willing to kind of work and help them, and so you kind of meet in the middle, and then you can build from there. And so really, just take, and my thing is I don't learn a darn thing if I'm sitting on the couch inside. And so, and I mean, we all have to have those days where we're like, okay, rest and be sharp, but also understand that you need to get out of your own little bubble and your own little world. And if you do that and you continue to meet people and are visible to others in the industry, then they start to pay attention to what you're doing. The biggest one of my dad's favorite things from when I was a kid that he absolutely hammered into my head and still reminds me of this at 35 years old is people do business first and foremost with you because they like you. Number two, they trust you. And number three, they respect you and your product works for them. Okay? So I think anytime you are, I don't care if you're selling widgets or Angus cattle or traveling or whatever you're doing, how can you build your product and kind of your network based on those three things, like trust and respect. And if you can do that, I don't care what industry you're in, you're going to be able to find people that are willing to help you. And the one very vital piece that builds in your own personal toolbox is self confidence. If you have self confidence, I don't care. If you have self confidence, you'll be able to go meet the best looking person in the room, to the president of the United States, to some multi bazillionaire that is very, very successful and business savvy. So I guess all the way back down to the basics is okay. How do I build self confidence without becoming arrogant and being willing to ask questions and get to know people on a personal level? One of the things that I've found the most success in, since I started my cattle business, cerebral, in since 2015, is that I came up with an idea with a couple buddies to every summer go on a summer trip. So what we do on that summer trip, we set up herd visits in a different part of the country. We're gone for about a week at that time, and so you just go and you set those up, and these could be any kind of operation or businesses that you admire, and take the time to go meet them. And if you can do that, then you are meeting people when they're the most relaxed because they're on their home turf. And so being able to kind of learn from them and visually see what has helped them become successful, that is another way that I've really built up continually a better contact base, that I'm armed with okay, I like how this person did this. I like how this person did that. And then you can meld that into your own business and kind of what you're doing at home. And so, that could be another way. You don't necessarily have to go to, ABC cattle breeder and spend 100K. You can go in and just get to know them. And I just bought bull semen on a guy that we toured a couple weeks ago for $25 a straw on one of the best bulls I've probably seen in a year. Yeah, so, and I wouldn't know he exists if I wouldn't have gone and like looked. And so just again, try to be diligent and focused on what your goals are, regardless of what it is, and just write those goals down, and just be okay with saying, okay, I'm fine if my goals don't turn out the way I think they will. I just have to be willing to get started. And then if you start and you put all those things together with discipline and focus, you're going to get to where you need to be. Yeah, and it's one of those things. Like, I'll kind of give you a little story. So first major show I judged in Mexico. Okay, this ages me, but it would have been 10 years ago, fall of 2014. Okay, and so I'm in Mexico, and I'm just about ready to judge, and I am like freaking nervous, and I'm like, and I end up puking before I go judge, but I have a driver take me to the show ring, and I'm ready for like freaking people to come out with firearms and knives, and I was so nervous going into that. And we get into the show ring, and show is supposed to start at 9. But remember, we're in Mexico, and so the whole meaning of time in old Mexico is just a little bit different than the United States of America. I'm used to people getting up at 4 a.m., getting their string ready, and I get out there, and literally there's nobody there except for a sound system guy playing Mexican rap in Spanish, testing out the sound system. And I'm walking around the ring, and I'm just laughing because I'm like, just relax. Yeah, and so the whole thing, and I still get nervous when I judge shows, but I really enjoy them now because I have the self-confidence in what I'm doing and what I'm capable of. But it just, I say that story because, it would be really easy to panic when you're that nervous. So figure out a way to fight through that, and you'll be fine. But I was just thankful that I could have some tequila after I got done with judging that show, and 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 I've been back down there once. I've been back down there another time, and but you never know where those doors are going to open, but you've got to get off your phone, and you've got to get out of the house, and if you can do that, you're gonna go somewhere. When I was a kid, and I don't know if you had the same realization too, but when I was a kid, we'd go to shows, and I really I really wasn't aware of so many of the hardships that life presents. I'm not even just talking about the cattle business and failure, and a calf dying or a business deal not going the way you thought it would, or there's gonna be, and I think that's where, as I've aged, I've really gotten to the point where I just accept the fact that I'm going to try enough stuff that I am going to fail at some point, but I have to be okay with failing, because otherwise I'm not going to do anything. And so if I can build through that failure and be smarter next time, then I'm way better off than if I would have never tried, because I have that experience now to be like, oh God, that was a complete and epic disaster. Let's try that a little differently, or build on success. But understand that, okay, yeah, okay, long term, this is going to be a success, and I'm going to be disciplined to make it that way, but also not forgetting the fact that, okay, I'm going to fail more than I'm going to succeed, and I'm okay with that. And if you're good with that, then you, even if some things fail, at the end of the day, you're going to be a success because you're trying. And even if you have to start over, you're not starting over from scratch. You're instead starting over from experience. And so my nickname for my dad is the Phoenix, because he has risen from the ashes of so many things that have gone haywire or not as expected. And he's a success. I mean, he's a business success. So both my mom and dad have been incredible role models in demonstrating what it looks like to push through failure. And so that's one of those things. If you don't take anything else from this interview today, just know that, okay, if I fail, I'm going to get up again and I'm going to try another way or another time. And if you keep doing that and learn from your experiences, you've beat 95% of the rest of the people on this planet. So I think that's where it's really important to say, okay, I'm not scared to make a change. If something if something isn't working, then okay, what do you have to do to say, okay, why do I keep hitting this wall? How do I pivot and change the outcome? And so, that's I think the step. If we have failure, how do we ask and change our kind of our steps to get to where we want to go? And there will be times, in my life where something doesn't go like I think, and I will have the most colorful language to describe that failure in the history of mankind, and it is definitely R-rated. But you can scream that at the top of your lungs, and you can still put one foot in front of the other outside of that. So yeah. So I mean, just I think that's where you have to say, okay, if you want to do something, try it and then keep going. And then if you feel like you need to make a change to another industry, do so. But, don't be afraid to keep evolving in what you do.
Clinton's probably given you like 50 pieces of advice today, but if you had to pick one or two pieces of advice to give to the next generation of agriculture, what would those be?
That's a really good question. And I think one thing that I have to always kind of remind myself and others is I think we have a tendency to think someone else knows how to do something better than we do, or maybe doubt our own abilities on something. And this is a self-doubt piece is something that I've struggled with my whole life. And so I think anytime that you can go into a situation and say, okay, I've done all the preparation for whatever I'm doing that I absolutely can, and if you are prepared for something and are knowledgeable on a subject, then you can go into that with peace. So I think my biggest thing is, okay, guys, again, be disciplined, but be ready for every opportunity that comes your way. And sometimes, like, I have had several opportunities that when they came up, I'm like, how on God's green earth am I going to pay for this? And it's one of those things where this all comes back to, okay, the question is, don't say I can't, ask how I can. Don't let the, oh God, this is scary, I'm never going to get out of debt, or I'm never going to do this, or don't ask that. Start to replace a negative kind of self-talk with a positive mindset. And if you start doing that, then those opportunities kind of present themselves, and you can figure out how to take advantage of something that maybe on the surface looks impossible. So just, I think the biggest change that I've had for myself in the last probably 2 years has been that I've really started to try to look at a developing a positive mindset over a self-doubt or a negative one. And so do the work on yourself first. And if you do that, on your mindset, working out, taking care of yourselves, that will help your mental health and your ability to look at the positives of potential situations and build yourself and your business. The second piece, just know that, hey, accept failure and keep pushing through it, and you're going to get to where you want to go.
Thank you all so much for listening to another episode of the Cattle USA Daily Podcast. I hope that you enjoyed today's format a little bit of a mix-up of taking a longer form episode and putting it down into about 20 minutes for you guys, just taking the good clips out of there and throwing it into here. If you want to learn more or hear more of this conversation, the full hour episode will be linked down below in the show notes so that you guys can check that out if you want to hear more of the conversation that Clinton and I had. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, rate, review, all of those things. It is truly just a way that we can continue to grow this podcast, can continue to reach more cattlemen out there in the industry, and continue to impact this industry positively. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode, and we will see you all tomorrow on another one. Have a good day, y'all.